small towns, big secrets. We follow the evidence, not the rumors. Crime Key Secrets. Find the key. Unlock the truth.
Is everything okay, Mark?
Look at this lens. For 12 years, this wasn't just a camera, it was a weapon. And the man holding it wasn't capturing the truth. He was manufacturing a lie that would enslave thousands. Mark Vicente thought he was filming a messiah. He used every trick of lighting, every angle, every edit to make a predator look like a saint. He built the trap, he polished the bars, he lured the victims in with his art. But the most terrifying moment isn't when you meet the devil. It's when you realize you've been his PR manager. When Mark finally pressed rewind, he saw what he had ignored for a decade. The subtle commands, the sadistic smiles he edited out, the fear in the eyes of the women he recruited. How does a man searching for the light end up building the dark? How does a genius filmmaker become the architect of a sex cult? This is not a story about being tricked. This is a forensic autopsy of complicity. Why do smart people follow monsters? The answer lies buried in a wound so deep, it blinded him to the crime he was filming. To understand the trap, we must look at the boy who walked into it. Johannesburg, 17th. Apartheid is tearing the country apart. In the middle of this chaos stands a boy who feels like an alien. Mark Vicente grew up in a fractured world, navigated by a fractured map. A boy learns how to be a man by watching his father. But Mark had 3 fathers, and each taught him a different kind of pain. The first, the ghost who vanished. The second, the tyrant who spoke with fists. The third, the spy who taught him love was transactional.
This created the father wound. Mark grew up with a security deficit. He was starving for a benevolent authority. He wanted someone strong enough to protect him, but wise enough to explain the chaos. Keith Raniere knew this. Predators don't see a damaged child. They see an empty vessel waiting to be filled.
Listen closely. There is a dangerous lie we tell ourselves about cults. We think they are for the weak, for the broken, for the stupid. We think, I would never fall for that. But that arrogance is exactly how the trap opens. By 2005, Mark Vicente wasn't weak. He was a Hollywood success story. He had directed What the Bleep Do We Know? A film that grossed millions and became a global phenomenon. He was famous, he was respected, he had money. But if you looked past the red carpet photos, you would see a man who was internally screaming. He described himself as a functional schizophrenic, successful on the outside, but carrying a nuclear winter on the inside.
I guess the big difference is the amount of work you put into it. Time moves quickly, and often it's too fast for us. It's a very subtle shift in energy that you notice, and when you notice it,
Why?
it changes everything.
Because Mark had a hole in his soul the size of a father. He didn't just
That
have
makes so much
daddy
sense.
issues. He had a father void. Father number 1, the ghost, abandoned him before he
Okay,
could speak.
so we're good to go.
Father
good.
number 2, the monster, a stepfather who beat him until bruises became his normal skin color. Father number 3, the spy, a cold, distant figure who taught him that love was a transaction. Mark learned one terrible lesson. Men are dangerous, but without a man to lead you, you are lost.
Just look at their body language.
This is the perfect psychological storm. Mark was suffering from status ambiguity. He was an artist
was a
seeking
trap for the
truth
mind.
in a shallow industry. He felt smarter than everyone around him. Yet emotionally, he
I
was a
always tell
frightened
people to trust
child
the process.
waiting for permission to exist. Keith Raniere didn't hunt Mark.
We'll find a way
He
to
didn't have to.
get through this
He
together.
simply positioned himself as the archetypal father Mark never had, the benevolent king, the wise sage. When a starving man sees bread, he doesn't
It's like
check
a
for
starving
poison.
man finally being fed.
Mark was starving for authority.
You still looking for that
And
story
then-
you wanted to tell?
The meeting happened, Albany, New
I think
York.
I might have found it.
Mark expected a CEO in a suite or a guru in robes. Instead, he met a nerd.
Agreed.
Keith Raniere wore old
Yeah, I think it's
sneakers,
fair.
cargo shorts,
It's not
and
a
a
lot.
t-shirt that looked like it came from a thrift store. He had long, greasy hair and thick glasses. He looked harmless. He looked like a guy who played video games in his mom's basement. This was the visual disarm. Mark lowered his guard immediately. How could this disheveled little man be dangerous? When Keith spoke, the trap snapped shut. He didn't talk about money. He didn't talk about
Complicity.
God. He talked about physics. He talked about ethics. He used a technique called intellectual grooming. He mirrored Mark's vocabulary. He validated Mark's cynical view of the world. He told Mark, "You see the Matrix, don't you? Everyone else is asleep.
The ability to
You are
observe your
awake.
patterns
Being awake hurts.
and break
I have the map to stop the pain." He flattered Mark's ego until Mark felt like he was the chosen disciple of a secret genius. Mark didn't join a cult that day. He thought he was joining a science experiment. He thought he was joining a moral revolution. He looked at Keith Raniere and saw the father who would finally teach him how to be a man. He didn't know he was looking at the man who would force him to betray his own soul. The seeker had found his answer, and it was a lie wrapped in a mathematical equation.
And that's when we realized it wasn't just a group, it was a perfect cult.
The honeymoon was over. Now, the work began. Mark entered the structure known as the Stripe Path.
Tighter.
It wasn't just a ranking
sure it holds.
system. It was a psychological Skinner box. To move up, you had to recruit. To stay in, you had to pay. Mark wasn't a billionaire like the Bronfman sisters. He was a filmmaker. His currency was his talent, his time, and his reputation. He poured everything into NXIVM. He deferred his dreams, his scripts, his own life, believing he was building a new civilization. But the price wasn't just financial, it was moral. And Kim used a technique called exploration of meaning. It sounded like therapy. It felt like an interrogation. Participants were forced to sit in a chair and confess their deepest flaws, their shames, their secrets. Keith taught that shame is the enemy of growth. And so to cure the shame, they maximized it. They forced people to be humiliated in public, claiming it would make them anti-fragile.
Don't cry.
This is the most dangerous weapon in a cult's arsenal. Weaponized vulnerability. When you confess your sins to a group,
The
you
persona
feel a rush of
breaks.
intimacy, but you also hand them the keys to your psyche. For Mark, witnessing this cruelty created a massive cognitive dissonance. His gut screamed, "This is wrong. Bull SS." But his programmed mind said, "No, this is necessary. Pain is just weakness leaving the body." To survive this conflict, Mark engaged in dissociation. He split his mind in two. The good soldier who followed orders,
We all stand here
and
together
the real Mark,
on the
who was
brink
screaming
of
silently
something new.
in a locked room of his subconscious.
And here's the trap. Once you dissociate,
Welcome.
you become
the
the
future.
perfect recruiter. Mark needed to validate his sacrifice. If NXIVM was a lie, then he had wasted years of his life. That truth was too painful to bear. So he sought consensual validation. He recruited his friends. He recruited actors from Hollywood. He told them, with tears in his eyes, that Keith Raniere had saved his life. He wasn't lying to them. He was lying to himself. He needed them to believe, so he could keep believing. But belief wasn't enough. Keith needed leverage. We often overlook the financial trap.
Your debt
Mark was a
is
successful
tightening.
director, but in NXIVM,
You belong
the money only flowed
to
one
us
way.
now.
Up, courses cost thousands. Seminars cost thousands. Mark was encouraged to invest in Keith's failed commodities market experiments. Why? Because a broke follower is a loyal follower. If Mark left,
Clock is at
he
0.
wouldn't just lose his
know
community, he
where
would
you
lose
are.
his livelihood. Keith had structured it so that Mark's financial future was entirely dependent on the cult's success. He was handcuffed by his own bank account. For 12 years, the mask held. Mark Vicente was the golden boy of NXIVM, but cracks were forming in the foundation. The cognitive dissonance was becoming a physical ache. He started to see the glitches in the matrix, the way Keith looked at thin women, the way money disappeared, the way ethics always seemed to benefit only one man. The seeker was still in there, buried under layers of programming, and he was about to wake up. Philosophy can rationalize a lot of things. It can explain away poverty, hierarchy, even obedience. But philosophy cannot explain the smell of burning human flesh. In 2017, the intellectual fog broke. Not with a debate, but with a scar. Mark's close friend, Sarah Edmondson, came to him. She was shaking. She lifted her shirt and showed him her hip. There was a cauterized brand, angry and red. She told him about the ceremony, being held down, the doctor, the pain. Mark looked at that scar, and the universe he had built for 12 years shattered. But the horror wasn't just the violence. It was the meaning. Mark looked closer at the symbol. It wasn't the elements. Like they claimed, he rotated the image. There it was, a K and an R. Keith Raniere. He wasn't a monk. He was a rancher. And the women Mark had recruited, they weren't students. They were cattle. This was the moment of the great collapse. The genius was a pimp. The Messiah was a monster.
We need to talk about moral injury. This is different from PTSD. PTSD is what happens when someone harms you. Moral injury is what happens when you realize you have harmed others. Mark realized that he was the bridge. He was the friendly face that lured women into the room where they were branded. His talent, his films, his charisma, they were the bait. This realization causes a fracture in the soul. The guilt is overwhelming. Most people would collapse, or they would run away and hide in shame. But Mark Vicente did something extraordinary. He transmuted his shame into rage.
He didn't leave immediately. That would be too easy. He decided to stay. He became a spy in the house of the devil. Mark knew that if it was just his word against Keith's, he would lose. Keith had millions of dollars. He had lawyers who destroyed lives for sport. He had collateral on everyone. So Mark weaponized his camera again.
I can't do that.
This time,
You're
he
compromising the
wasn't
entire
filming
operation.
propaganda. He was filming evidence.
What that? Sad night.
Imagine the
Yes,
terror.
everything is fine.
Every conversation with Keith became a high-stakes poker game. Mark had to act like a loyal follower while secretly recording every lie, every threat, every admission.
Did you see anything?
He recorded Keith admitting
Nothing
to
yet.
tampering with the women's elections. He recorded the gaslighting. He lived in a state
Are you
of
sure about
extreme
that, Mark?
paranoia. Was his phone tapped? Was he being followed? If Keith found out, Mark knew he wouldn't just be expelled. He would be destroyed. The Bronfman money would bury him in lawsuits until he couldn't afford to breathe. The escape wasn't a clean break. It was an evacuation. Mark and Sarah gathered their evidence. Hard drives, recordings, documents. They weren't just leaving a community. They were declaring war on a cult that had blackmail material on them. They drove away into the night, in the rear view mirror, half expecting to see headlights following them. They had the truth, but would anyone believe them? Or was the world too enchanted by the self-help guru to see the predator underneath? They took their story to the FBI, then to the New York Times, and finally, they put it on screen in The Vow. Today, Keith Raniere is serving a 120-year prison sentence. The cult is dismantled. The brands are fading. And Mark Vicente, he lives a quiet life in Portugal. He still makes films, but his greatest work was surviving his own past. He is not defined by the cult, but by the courage it took to leave it. He realized that the map he was looking for never existed, or rather, It wasn't in Keith's hands. It was in his own.
The ultimate lesson of Mark Vicente's story is not about how dangerous Keith Raniere was. It is about how vulnerable we are. Mark's tragedy wasn't that he wasn't smart. It was that he surrendered his sovereignty. He gave away his authority to a father figure because he was afraid to walk alone. True freedom doesn't come from a master, a guru, or a system. It comes from confronting your own shadow. It comes from accepting that life is chaotic and no one is coming to save you. And that is okay, because you are enough.
If there is one rule Mark Vicente learned, it is this: never give away your camera, never surrender your eye, never give away the authority to write your own story,